Okay, next Q&A. So, let's start with a pretty simple one. How far into the belt ranking system can I get by just doing fundamentals?
If we're talking fundamentals class, generally you're supposed to get to a phase belt. You could get, close to blue. If you're talking just fundamental movements, you can get pretty far. I think I got pretty far through the ranks just doing fundamentals as a kid. I got to blue, and then that's when I started really adding in more intense things, but I was doing advanced classes. So if you're talking fundamentals class, once you're a phase belt, you should move on. If you're talking just fundamental movements as far as in your game plan, you can get pretty far, but you will at some point hit a block. I would say I hit a block probably late blue, early purple, where I needed to start adding in more advanced transitions and techniques and things like that.
Fundamentals. So, how far can you get with fundamentals? I believe that you can get to purple belt with solid fundamentals. And if I'm going to define fundamentals in 2020, I'm going to define fundamentals as old school-ish jiu-jitsu, right? Having a good closed guard top and bottom. Good positions top and bottom of the 9 positions that we talk about. But I think you can get all the way to purple belt before you are going to start confronting the challenges, and when people can force you to confront the challenges of new school contemporary jiu-jitsu. So I think that you can make it all the way to the earliest levels of purple belt with just fundamental jiu-jitsu.
What if they are referring to the class?
Okay. I think that if you're just referring to the class, then you're only doing fundamental movements, you're only going to make it to blue belt, right? Because if you're only doing fundamentals, I'm going to define a fundamental class is white belt, early blue belt. Eventually you're going to hit a plateau where you don't truly know if your technique is going to work against the upper echelon of your belt level. So it's time to start testing yourself in a purple belt or up class. And if you have some proficiency of success, then you know you're heading in the right direction. But I think you're only going to get to blue belt, not through blue belt, to blue belt doing fundamental classes.
Yeah, I think it's literally just the issue of training partners, because most of the upper belts don't do that class, and most of the competitors are doing the other classes as well. So you're just not going to get as much exposure as would be optimal, especially as you get to the end of white belt. If you only do the fundamentals class, it's going to be a little bit tougher to progress. Next question. When should I start doing the advanced class and not doing the fundamentals if I only have time to do one?
I think that you choose the advanced class when you're physically capable to make it through and you have the technique to be competitive. If you have to ask your partner for assistance, beyond, if we're not doing some crazy jiu-jitsu, if you're having to ask your partner for assistance or you're having to communicate through a role, you're not ready for the advanced class. But I think when you can be competitive enough, you're physically capable enough, you can go through a whole 90 minutes and you are at the upper echelon of the fundamentals class and you can only choose one, then you do the advanced class.
To put it, our rule here is that if you are not a blue belt, so if you're a white belt doing the advanced class, you are supposed to do the fundamentals or intermediate class before, because when you go into the advanced class, we're already building off the things they're doing in intermediate. So, they might work on X guard basics, X guard entries in the intermediate, but we're already on lapel fed X guard sweeps from there. So you're gonna have to be that the line there is blue. So if you're a white belt, you're supposed to do that fundamentals and intermediate. So we have both levels. So until you're a blue belt, you should just do the fundamentals and intermediate once you hit blue belt, because we have had blue belts go from the intermediate class and then join the advanced class. Then when you're blue, that means the coaches think you have enough of the fundamentals, then you can just do the advanced class. And then again, making sure that you're able to make it through the class. And sometimes are able to build up your conditioning in that class, but just making sure you can make it through. But the line is blue, so white belt, just do fundamentals and intermediate. Once you hit blue, then you can just do the advanced class.
And then also, in an academy like 88, or anywhere where you have a perceptive group of coaches, if you are performing at a high level in the fundamentals and intermediate class, the coach is going to take notice and have a conversation and let you know, hey, I think it's to the point where that you join the advanced class to further your jiu-jitsu growth, right? That's one thing that you should trust, is that if you are doing what you're supposed to do and you're performing at a high level, the coaches are going to make that invitation or that recommendation that you should go to the next class level.
That goes perfectly into a different question. How do I demonstrate higher skills to the coaches? So you said at a place where the coaches are perceptive, what exactly are you looking for so how do they demonstrate these higher skills to the coaches?
For me, when I'll take it to the kids' perspective. So when I look at the kids and I look at who I want to either move up or who I think is a good competitor, is someone that can do the techniques that we drilled in class, or is at least trying it and has some success with it. So an example is right now we're going over the under-over series in the kids' classes, and the way that I can tell who's more focused and who's performing at a higher level is that they are trying the techniques in class without me having to put them in there, or if we are doing positional sparring, they're trying to stay in that position and they're trying to do it, and at some point within that week or week and a half, they have success with it. So that's a big thing for the coaches to notice, is if you're following the plan of the class. I know you get frustrated when we do positional sparring and everyone just lets go of the position. And that right there it's a red flag. The coach is either going to yell at you or they're just going to look away. But if you're really trying the techniques that they do in class, and you maybe not have success with it, but you're at least trying, and the coaches will notice that. I notice that with the kids when I see them, or either positional or regular rounds, and I'm giving them either a specific task or not a specific task, but I see them trying what we're working on in practice. And to me, that is a big, I guess, a green flag, where I look at the kid and now my focus is going there, and that's where my focus ends up. And as far as the kids that aren't necessarily trying the techniques and aren't trying, then it's either I have to discipline them or I just let it be,
So a couple of things I look at. What I don't look at is when you train, all you do is compete, right? You're only doing what you need to do to win. So you might be out hustling your partner. You might be out muscling your partner. You might be tough, but those aren't the things I'm looking for. The things I look for is that whatever you are doing, I can define. I have realized that you, as my caveman student, have made a tool or have a tool that you are using to be successful, right? You might be my hip bump triangle guy. You may be my drag to the back guy. You may be my butterfly sweep guy. But if you have a tool that you're using, right, and you're being successful and you're committed to using a tool or a couple tools to be successful, right, that's when I look for, because now I know that you are doing jiu-jitsu with a purpose, right? You're not just showing up to roll around or just to compete or be tough or not get submitted. You're doing jiu-jitsu with a purpose. And I think that is one thing that I look for when it's time to move up, someone that is doing jiu-jitsu with a purpose.
It's like asking questions too. If someone wants to understand the technique better, they will ask you questions and they will really take an interest in it, even in the middle of the class, not in the middle, but during drilling, if you call the coach over and ask questions about it, or even after practice, you pull the coach aside and you ask questions. That's another thing that takes our notice, because it means that you're thinking about the technique at a deeper level, either something you don't understand or something you're curious about that wasn't explained. So that's another thing that takes our notice.
What about outside of the practice room? Because this isn't immediately, they didn't say exactly that, they just mean inside. They just said, how do I demonstrate higher skill? So maybe that's a reference to competing or something. So how does competing influence how you view their skill?
Reactions to performance.
So how important is competing when you judge their skill?
I mean, I guess teaching kids, my focus isn't, the kids I think are very good, but and while that was the goal, it's not my number one concern. So for me, when a kid, as far as competing, Again, well, the first thing is if they're attempting the techniques that we had just done. I remember, I'll call out, we had Trey Bruce, and the first year we went to Kids Pans, Coach Timmy and I went over sit-outs a week before Pans. We go to Pans, and Trey's doing sit-outs and winning matches with sit-outs. From, shooting, failed, and he sits out. So that was something where we really noticed and took notice to. So anything that, you've been working on that you're able to execute, and then for me, mentally, how you react to your performance. So even with the kids, I try to train them young. If you lose, I want to see how they react. I don't particularly like crying because I don't think it's an appropriate reaction. I think instead of tears and being emotional, it's better to come to me and be able to talk to me, and we can talk about how you performed, and then you should be all right. And even with adults, I think adults can have an issue with how they react to performance. And if you didn't do so well, another thing is go to the coach and ask, what can I do better? What happened? Have the discussion with your coach, because some people don't want to do that. So I would say in the tournament, what can you execute and how well can you execute it? And then how do you react to your performance? I think is a big mental skill to have.
When I think about competition, I don't think about the absolute, about wins and losses. I look for areas of progress. And I think when you expose yourself to competition, there are more opportunities to see areas of progress that can make me take notice, right? There's the aspect of cutting the weight. There's the aspect of being in the gym. There's the aspect of mental toughness. There's the aspect of disciplined jujitsu. There's an aspect of executing the techniques in the situations that we have gone over. It just creates a situation where there are many opportunities to assess progress. So that's why I like competition. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but it makes it easier.
I actually had a conversation this morning with one of the white belts, and I think it highlights how competition helps the coach to observe skill. And what he was saying was, he said after he competed, he started to relax a little bit in training and work on specific things rather than try to win the role. Because he realized, in order for me to win out there, I need to work on some things. So I can't just be trying to win every round when we spar or in training. And he said something that he realized how important it was for why the coaches view competing as important, because he said, because how could the coach tell what the skill level of the students is? Because you can have one guy trying 100% in the training role, and you can have another student who's just going like 70, 80% working on problem areas. So in competing, that I guess one of the factors is constant, which is effort. Mm-hmm. Whereas in training, it's not clear what the exertion level or the effort level placed by each person in that specific role is. So I think that's one of the reasons why why competing is good for skill assessment.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, as far as the kids go, the best kids in the room aren't necessarily the best performers in the tournament. So, and I remember having a talk, because I had to talk to one of the kids before Pan Kids, and the child, I took her for a walk, and I said, what's wrong? Are you okay? Why are you nervous? And she says, I didn't do great in practice today. We were out in California. Like, I didn't do well in practice today. And I said, so? And she's like, well, I feel like I'm not going to do well because I didn't do well in practice. And I said, the way you do in practice does not determine how you're going to compete. There's a lot of factors. One, you're not fighting any, I think she was 120 pounds at the time or something. Like, when you're not fighting any 110-pound gray belt females right now, So everyone that you're fighting in the training room is not who you're competing against. So you're assessing it. You're fighting yellow and orange belts and some white belts, and you're assessing your performance based on that instead of where you need to be at the moment. And I gave an example. I was like, there's adults in the room that I watch them, and they even have conversations where, like, they're getting beat up in the practice room all the time, but then they go to a tournament and they're one of the best performers. And so there's not really a correlation between performance in practice and performance at a tournament, because the people who are at a higher level are constantly trying new things. You know, like I'm not afraid to get my guard passed or swept or anything in practice if I'm trying something new. And there's a lot of people, that's a perception in practice, where like, oh, you lost that round. It's like, maybe I did, but I learned something, because maybe I fell into a submission that I came up with, or I learned a mistake that I was making, and now I can fix it, and now the next time that won't happen. So performance and practice there's no correlation between performance and practice and performance at a tournament. And some of the kids, the Pan Kids champions, none of them were the top performers in the practice. It's never correlated to that.
I wouldn't say it's partially correlated, if we're being exact with language, but it's not. The level of correlation is way lower than what most people think it is. Okay, next question. When I was a white belt, it was about survival and grasping broad concepts of what BJJ actually is, as well as demonstrating a level of commitment. Now I'm at blue and I'm trying to continue to do those things, but figure out how to get to the next level. Do I choose a system and focus on making that my thing, or do I keep my studies broad and work on deepening my expertise on a broad level? I feel different at blue, but I am unsure how to change my behavior or if I even need to in order to keep progressing. So what advice would you give to this blue belt?
If you're asking a question with the depth that you just asked, I would say it's better to go an inch wide and a mile deep. So yes, commit yourself to a system that will become your thing, that will build your confidence, that will make you identifiable in the practice room to your teammates and your partners. And once you have, quote unquote, mastered your thing, you build out from your thing. But intuitively, if you are working on developing, quote unquote, your thing, your jiu-jitsu is going to broaden anyway, right? So if you're a single leg X guy, once you have the single leg, you have 3 single leg X sweeps and you have a foot lock, well, all of a sudden you're putting your partner down, you gotta figure out how to sweep after you put your partner down, right? Or you have to figure out how to continue your foot lock transitions when people are defending certain ways. So your jiu-jitsu is gonna broaden anyway. So I would say if you are a person who thinks that deep and can ask such a perceptive question, go an inch wide and a mile deep into a system, and it will continue to give you day after day meaningful jiu-jitsu.
I would agree. I would say, the identifiable thing is true, because at blue is when I started to develop my knee cut, and that was something that worked for me. Is I got good at guard passing first, or I was actually good at guard, so I built up my guard, and my guard was just Delahiva. Fairly basic Delahiva, I had a cross choke, and then a little later into blue belt I started to develop the knee cut, and that was just 2 systems at blue that I had really developed to be decent. I don't think I really had any takedowns yet. It was knee cut passing and a couple other things that I could do if that failed, and then it was Delahiva, fairly basic Delahiva, guard retention, and those were for me it was just 2. It was just 2 systems that I had worked on personally. And then that got a little, as you go up in the belts, it gets more complicated, but I would agree I had to learn the ins and outs of Delahiva and the ins and outs of Nika. And I'm still developing those, but those were the 2 things at blue belt that brought me success that I had to really delve into and develop. And for me, it was 2. I think for some people it could be different. Maybe it's only 1, maybe it has to be 3, but it's no more than, it's not going to be too many systems. I would say develop 1, once you're okay at that, develop 2, and for me, I just needed the 2.
As a coach, I think you guys saying that the strength, building on a strength and making it your thing is kind of funny, because you are probably 2 of the more well-rounded competitors, right? Or black belts. So it's funny to me that you say to build up a strength, but I guess it's because you want them to be confident in something first before they delve into, kind of coming into practice and just kind of being half the time losing a position and half the time winning a position is going to be a rough practice. Whereas at least if there's one part that they are good at, then that's a good base.
I knew things from different areas. So I knew takedowns. I wasn't super good at them. I came here as a teen, so I knew a lot of jiu-jitsu, but the 2 things that were, for me, identifiers were my Delahiva and my knee cut. And at blue belt, I don't really think I had. I knew takedowns, so I did them as a kid, but I wasn't great at doing it. I didn't start developing takedowns till purple, which I'm not saying you should do that and wait till purple belt, but for me, I think that was the journey. But I think in general, yeah, I was pretty well rounded. But I know that those were the two systems that I really, really went deep into, was the De La Riva and the knee cut.
I don't think it's easy for most people to be well-rounded, right? I think for me particularly, the way I think about jiu-jitsu, because I don't get hung up on anxieties and I'm open-minded to try stuff, I think it was a little easier for me to become well-rounded. But in my mind, I do have a system, right? Everything builds back and front to single legs, right? Because I guess my thing is quote unquote passing. That's my thing. But everything builds back to singles, right? So it's either how it ends or how it starts or how I can get to a single and I reverse engineer or engineer to that position. But it is when I'm teaching, I'm not as much of as strict. I'm not as strict as going 8 positions deep or 8 transitions deep in one position, but I do feel as though it's easier when you're teaching someone and bringing someone up to go an inch wide and a mile deep. And even with my most successful team competitors, we would, I would always give them a trick. It was always a fun thing, and then we would build back from it, right? Like Matthias, however you say it, he had a hip bump triangle, right? So no matter if he went down 12 points, I knew that if you get the close guard at the end of a match, he was going to hip bump triangle, right? Megan can always go get a takedown, right? So I always, when I'm bringing people up, want to give them something that they can be exceptionally confident in, that they can always go to, that they know can win a match, and then build them out from there. And it's always easier for me to make a well-rounded competitor if they have one thing that they're really good at.
So, just to clarify, what you're saying is that the path to being well-rounded is to first develop something that you are very good at.
I agree.
Okay.
It develops your neural pathways to learn more jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, especially with as many resources we have right now. We can have jiu-jitsu ADD, right? So I think, especially at this time, you commit to becoming good at something, and it will build out your capability to learn more jiu-jitsu.
And like you said earlier, it's hard to, if you're working on takedowns, passing, guard all at the same time, and maybe half the time you can do it, half the time you can't. That's a hard practice where you're kind of good at all of this, but you don't have the thing that you can always fall back on for confidence. And so, as a kid, it was, for me, coming up as a kid, it was different because it was all, it's a kid fighting kids. But I knew when I went into the adult training room, I had my De La Riva, my knee cut, and then from there I felt the confidence to expand and build from that.
I noticed that one of the fact that you have to have depth as well as breadth at blue belt is one of the reasons why that journey from blue to purple is so difficult. Because in the past, we've had a couple guys, actually a lot of people, they never developed the breadth. And so what they do, we'll do both scenarios, but the one I want to talk about is when they don't have depth. So what happens is they have a lot of breadth though. And these guys, they're going to, whether they fight I remember they would be in the room and they're going to give everybody a good battle, right? They're going to give the black belts and the brown belts and the purple belts wars. And then they go to the worlds at blue belt and we think they're going to win because they're out in the training room giving the black belts all they can handle, and they lose by the same margin. So they can lose by the same amount to every single person, because they never had that depth, but they had the breadth. It's hard to beat their ass, but it's hard for them to win. Yeah. So we noticed, I remember that was the thing. And then of course, the other one is more obvious, which is the person who has a lot of depth but no breadth, and that's usually they can be tactically beaten at, you see them very dominant in some matches, and then you see in other matches it looks like they don't know any jiu-jitsu because
they get put in that position that
yeah.
they don't know.
And I'd like to expand the question. So let's expand this question out to the belt after. What about purple belt? what should a purple belt do to get to brown belt? And maybe when you guys discuss that, you can talk about what you yourselves have seen as the differences in like a blue belt versus a purple belt, you know?
This is a purple. We've had conversations about this, and purple is the well-rounded belt. That's where, and we've talked about, as a blue belt, you need to be a specialist and have something. I mean, obviously you can't have an amazing guard and then no takedowns and no guard passing. But, you know, the other two should be good, but a purple belt is really when you start to develop on and become, maybe not a specialist, but you start to raise up the other areas more. And that's, I remember my first year at purple, again, it was just the De La Hiva and the knee cut, and my passing wasn't really that developed, and I didn't have takedowns, and so I had a bit of a tough time my first year. But then when we started to, you know, I remember I sat down with you, we started to make a game plan to develop the takedowns and raise the level of the guard passing and the guard. And that was when I had a lot of success my second year, was when I could fight from all the positions fairly confidently, in my opinion. And yeah, so for me, it was, I had decent guard passing, decent guard, but the takedowns were lacking, and that showed because I was losing matches. Even at brown belt, I was losing matches because my takedown confidence was low. So when that started to, when I had my takedowns were purple belt level, and my guard and my passing was all at the same level, that's when I started to be successful. So purple belt is the well-rounded belt, and that's hard, especially if you're, you know, you win at blue belt with the guard, then you have to go to guard passing, or now you have to do takedowns. And so that's why I think that belt is so difficult, because you have to make yourself good at the things that you're not comfortable with.
To go from purple to brown is not only a physical task, I also think it's in how you think about, practice, execute jiu-jitsu. From purple to brown, I feel as though you are taking a very professional approach where you're problem solving through jiu-jitsu, where you are recognizing, diagnosing situations top, bottom, from every position, maybe takedowns, may it be guard, may it be passing, and you're able to conceptually articulate thoughts through and execute jiu-jitsu to move through those scenarios. I don't feel as though purple to brown is a time in thing. It's about the way that you approach jiu-jitsu on a philosophical level. I feel like a lot of people spend, if they don't die at blue belt, they spend a lot of time at purple belt, because that's where you're truly figuring out, like Vanessa said, how to become well-rounded, right? And I think becoming well-rounded, especially in new jiu-jitsu, is very difficult, because a lot of people have a silver bullet, right? If you have a good berimbolo, you can beat a lot of people, right? If you have the fastest knee cut in the nation, right, you're gonna beat a lot of people. But when you start getting to, when you have to be well-rounded, when you start encountering training partners and competitors that can deal with the depth of whatever it is that you do, right, you gotta be definitely well-rounded. But when I look from purple to brown, it's more so how you think through jiu-jitsu. That's my thing.
Purple to brown almost seems like the decision point for whether you're going to be a purple belt wearing a black belt, or you're going to be a legit black belt. So what I mean by that is, so purple belt is where you see, so if we say that to go from blue to purple, you have to have something that you're good at, which would mean that at purple belt, you're fighting a bunch of specialists, right? So you might fight one guy who's a berimbolo specialist, and the next person might be a takedown guy, and the next person after that could be a worm guard guy, and the guy after that could be a under-over passer, and they're all gonna be very good at their particular system. So like Vanessa said, it's a lot about becoming well-rounded, right? And this is the belt that Lloyd would always say is the problem belt, because it is the belt in which if you choose to ignore what you're bad at, you will never fix those things. Because if you don't, there's no need for you to be on the bottom of mount, because in the room, unless you have a fully, like a brown and black belt dominant training room, which is very rare, even nowadays it's extremely rare, you're not gonna be on the bottom of mount. So how are you going to work on that? You can't rely on the nature of the class just to help you improve those skills. And I believe that it is a time where you have to develop critical thinking about jujitsu, and you might have to raise your if you're a competitor, you have to raise your athletic performance at purple belt. Like purple belt is like you have to become it's a professional. And I think that is what a lot of people struggle with. So I believe that you can go from blue to purple to an extent without really critically thinking about jujitsu. But like purple to brown, you will have to at some point sit down and burn soul energy trying to understand jujitsu differently than how you understood it before. And I feel like a lot of people are incapable of doing that or unwilling to do that. And then what happens is they usually just hang around, and at some places they move up the ranks because they've just been around, or at some places they just stay at purple. But in reality, they never progress past that purple belt, that real purple belt, like what they are is a purple belt. They might wear a different belt, but they are a purple belt. And the only way to get out of really being a purple belt and progressing to brown is by that critical thinking aspect. So what would you guys say is the difference between brown and black? The journey from brown to black.
This brown belt was for me the hardest, and I think it's difficult because in my opinion it's a combination of what you need to do at blue and purple. So not only do you need to maintain your well-roundedness from purple, but you also need to dig a little deeper. And I would say I had to really dig deep in my passing and my guard. And my takedowns, I would say, are, okay. But I really, for me, I think I had to really dig deep in 2 areas. And I still had to keep my third area up to par. And so for me, I had a really difficult time because at that point, I don't think I really had that critical thinking point until brown. And it wasn't until late brown where I really made that decision, and where I said, I have to be able to somehow work on all 3 of these things. For me, at least. I don't know about other people's experiences, but normally you're only a brown for a year. I was there for 3, and it wasn't until I really took it serious. I didn't win my first Grand Slam until that Nogi Worlds, and it was because that was a commitment to bring my takedowns up to par, and then Europe was a commitment to dig deeper into my guard and my passing and really make that decision. And even now I'm still doing the same thing, but it's, at each belt it's a bigger gap. So white to blue is a huge gap, and blue to purple is small, purple to brown is little, and brown to black is tiny, but you have to commit yourself to be able to understand what that small gap is and be able to really, I had to use a lot of mental toughness to be able to get myself to practice all the things that I needed to, drill the things I needed to, identify what I needed. And so brown was difficult for me because, like I said, I think it's a combination of blue and purple where not only do you have to keep your 3 areas up to par, but you also need to dig deeper into 2. And I think when I finally started reaching more success at brown was when I was able to delve into 2 at a time, but also keep my 3rd area up to par. And then still, get those micro transitions and those little things that you really need. So that for me, that was difficult, but that's what I think. That was my experience, at least.
Okay, brown to black. Haven't thought about it. It's been a long time. So from purple to brown, the main thing, the way Julius kind of rephrased what I said, is critical thinking. But I think the biggest difference from moving from brown to black is when you take extreme ownership of your personal development, right? That's when you, it's not your coach, it's not your professor, it's not your sensei cracking the whip. It's when you have extreme ownership over your process to improve your jiu-jitsu every day. And when I say improve your jiu-jitsu, not only your physical and performance and competition and practice, but also your critical thinking, how you approach jiu-jitsu, how you measure, how you have a personal measurement system to make sure your jiu-jitsu is growing every single day. And I think that's what's going to put you on the path to black belt when you own how you improve, right? It's I always would say to my teams, when I had my teams, I have to trust that if I walk out of this room, you guys are going to do what you're supposed to do for 20 minutes without me coming back, right? And that's how I know you are committed to success. And part of that is me instilling that in them, right? But part of that is also them being committed enough that they know they should do the right thing. And I would test them, right? Well, I would disappear to the other side, go get the judo mat, and when I would come back, one thing I would look for is, are they committed to doing the things they need to do to improve when I'm not watching them, right? And that's one thing that I would say is important from brown to black, is when you truly take extreme ownership over your progression. And that can mean you're asking questions, that can mean you're studying, that can mean you can be creating problem scenarios for you to solve. It's all about how you approach jiu-jitsu at that point, right? I feel like up through purple, right, your coach, your professor is creating those scenarios for you. But when you get to brown belt, it's going to be a high level, extreme ownership of your progression, right? And we want to see you grow without me telling you every step along the way. And that's one thing that I look at with someone who should be a brown belt, or as they're progressing through their brown belt.
I remember getting really frustrated because I felt like I couldn't break through. And I mean, you had that talk with us a lot where you said, at that point I gotten to brown. So everything that you were doing as a coach was great. And, the technical advice I was getting was good, the tournament schedule, the training recommendations, everything was great. But it wasn't until I made the decision to take that even further and start to make decisions for myself was until I really broke through and started to finally, get the wins of the Grand Slams. And then that was very frustrating for me. And it wasn't until I really realized that, and I really was able to grow as a person and understand that small factor, I didn't do well at brown. And then once I made that decision, where I had to take control of my training, do it right, take control of my drilling, and a lot of that's different things, and just take further the things you had already instilled in me, and that's when I really felt successful. And then, at black, it's even easier just to be able to do that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying is the coach's influence in creating the macro training environment becomes less important at brown, and what becomes more important is the micro training that you yourself are in control of. Okay. So let's just close it out with toughest belt for you and how you got through it.
I was brown. Brown was so frustrating. Brown was the belt where even just as a person in my personal life, I grew a lot and I had to learn a lot of things and I had to overcome a lot of mental blocks. And like I said, it was a combination of just me maturing as a person, being able to balance all of the responsibilities I had effectively, and then being able to take my jiu-jitsu deeper. And I remember specifically one thing that I wasn't doing was when we were drilling techniques in practice, I wasn't really, I would pick them up and I would try them, but I wasn't really taking them any further. So now when we do things in practice, literally the only reason that I'm working on my X guard is because we're doing it in practice, and I say, all right, well, this is something that I'm going to work on now because I'm not good at it. We're doing it in practice, so now I can work on it. And before, I think I had my little things that I wanted to do, and if we weren't drilling it in practice, I wasn't as focused on it. But now that I made that decision later in brown, before everything got shut down, was, it's those little decisions, personal growth, technical growth, mental, being able to focus better, and knowing, just taking responsibility for my own growth was really when everything got a lot better. So brown was for sure the toughest for me.
I think purple belt was the hardest belt for me, but purple belt was interesting because I had some personal feelings about it. And what I would say, one, I feel as though at purple belt, I performed at a very high level for a long period of time, and it was stressful to keep that up. During my generation, when I came to purple belt, I was already at the upper level. I competed at the upper level with those guys and that generation graduated, and I did another year of purple belt and had to beat up the next generation, right? So it's always a lot of anxiety when you have the young lions coming up, and you got to take on those guys too. And I performed at a high level, and I would say purple belt was the hardest one for me, mentally, emotionally, because I thought I deserved something, right? And now thinking back on it, it's hard for me to be honest about that, because now I think it's silly, but I thought after my first 18 months, I was a brown belt. And all the guys that I was whooping who were world champions at Marcelo's, they were already brown belts, right? But, you know, I go to the Worlds, I win 4 matches, I bow out to Keenan, and I come back and do it again because I can be a world champion. But the stress of having to be at the upper echelon, and now there's a Raham Matulo who I can't pass his guard. I have a hard time passing his guard. You know, Satava, you know, now we got to do it 8-12 times, but only had to do it 4 in 1 year. You know, that mentally and emotionally, it was a tough belt for me because I had to do it for 20 months at the highest level to move to the next belt, because I thought I deserved something. And it's so hard for me to admit that, because there's very few people who say they went to the purple belt words at middleweight and never lost a match, but that's true for me, right? It took me 8 to win it. The first year I did 4, so I was 12-0, only 1 gold medal.
The only single division gold medalist who went 12-0.
12 wins. And you know, I really get teared up because I'm embarrassed to admit that I thought I deserved something. And then when I earned brown belt, and you know, it was a lot of relief. To me, it was the same thing. I went into brown belt, I was performing at the highest level. I was going to Brazil, and I was taking top 4 with the best guys in the world right away, 1 month after promotion. But I was having fun again because I didn't feel as though I deserved something. And I spent the most time at brown, and I never had that thing where I felt like I deserved anything, right? I was just having fun. I was just performing. I took my lumps. I got married. You know, there's a lot of things that happened at brown belt, and I spent 3 years there, my longest belt. Right now, I've been a black belt for most of my career, but brown belt was my longest colored belt. But I know I didn't have that pressure feeling I deserved something, and I had so much fun. And I had so much personal development, so much growth. I feel as though that's when I really became the most well-rounded, when I became, you know, funky, and the takedowns got even better. There was no tension in my competition, and you know, and me and Short Round would have fun while I would make sure he was recording so we can get a highlight off. You know, brown belt was really fun for me, but purple belt was that real belt that I feel like I struggled because I felt as though I deserved something.
Cool. Thank you, guys.